I've had to stop some people, I've had to bully some people, I've bashed some people on the head. I've bullied people to get their friends to come, I've bullied people to buy tables. Thank you so much, everyone. It's really much appreciated. Your dressing out, extra effort means a lot to us, so thank you from the whole of the Path to Possibilities team. Thank you. You won't see all the team members, but can I please have a round of applause for the team, please? It really takes a lot. It takes a lot. And before I start my actual speech, please, this whole event won't be put together if not for Deborah May. Can you please thank everyone? Thank you so much. They're on that table over there. They've put together a fabulous event. Thank you. Thank you. Maya was over there. You wanted to stand up? Tonight I'm actually going to focus on an emerging challenge we face as a charity and end with the progress of two of our children, God's Power Wanjuku and Balaraba CD. I actually hadn't planned on talking about Balaraba at all, but an event last week which threatened their education meant that I really had to address the value that we place on the education of girls in Nigeria. So what am I concerned about as a charity? Well, I'm concerned that more and more well-educated, privileged, and articulate Nigerians are expressing the view that Nigeria doesn't need charities, that instead we need investment and partnerships. They say it's rebranding Nigeria. They want to move Nigeria away from bad news and more towards positive thinking. These people want us to focus on the good in Nigeria instead of always highlighting the bad things. The privileged voices want the emphasis to shift away from poverty, corruption, and mismanagement and move towards progress, investment, and partnership. Now, I've thought about what might be at play here, and I think there might be two things. Firstly, Nigerians are sick and tired of being labelled. If we're not labelled as fraudsters, we're labelled as corrupt. If we're not labelled as corrupt, we're labelled as poor. Every negative label under the sun has been associated with Nigerians, and we're sick and tired of it. But shutting down a debate about the real needs of ordinary Nigerians by curiously asserting that Nigeria doesn't need charity is denial. Perhaps it's more than denial. Perhaps some people don't want to be confronted with the level of poverty that exists in Nigeria. Or perhaps they don't want questions asked about their own explicit or complicit participation in fueling this poverty. Nigeria doesn't need charities, that's what they say. They say it needs investments and partnership. Well, let's not forget who the biggest investors in Africa is right now, China. And let's not forget the many accusations levied against that regime, that their approach is uninterested in, if not opposed to, human rights and democracy. And quite frankly, when China begins to reap the rewards or the returns of their big investments and partnership, well, let's just say that I personally don't think that they will be too interested in the fair distribution of wealth, in social justice and human rights, and in equal access to education, healthcare, and employment. Those who say that Nigeria needs partnership and investment, not charity, they make a good argument. They argue that investment and partnership will provide development and break the cycle of dependency and poverty, but we have to unpick this argument just a little. We have to ask, who exactly is dependent on aid? I can tell you now that in the 4 years that we've been working in poor Nigerian communities, I've not yet come across not one Nigerian community dependent on aid. And I'm not saying that there aren't countries across Africa that depend on aid. I'm just saying that Africa is a continent. We're not all the same. Our problems are unique. Because I see too many communities making the most of the tiniest of resources, selling anything and everything. True entrepreneurs who can make anything work. They're survivors, fighters. Now, there are over 160,000 charities in this country. 160,000 charities in a country considerably richer than Nigeria. I don't hear anyone asserting that this country doesn't need charities. You can have investment and partnership working incredibly well alongside charities. And that's my argument. It's not one or the other. There are strong arguments for more investments and partnership across Africa. But those who make the arguments should make the arguments cleanly, without slinging mugs at charities and lazily implying that Africa doesn't need charities, because both can and do need to coexist. Charities can tug at the hearts and the consciences of big businesses, including the governments that contract with them. And big businesses and partnerships can challenge charities to be more efficient and outcome-focused. Perhaps the other reason why people are turning against African charities, and people are turning against African charities. We know and we see people that are a bit more willing to fundraise for other charities but Nigerian charities, for other charities but African charities. Perhaps the other reason why people are turning away from African charities stems from the accusation that some charities exploit poverty by constantly bombarding the West with images of starving children, flies circling their mouth, looking dejected into the camera. You know those images. I hate those images. Rightly or wrongly, it also embarrasses me. I hate that even my 6-year-old is beginning to associate Nigeria with those images. I hate those images, not because they depict poverty, but because they often inadvertently or lazily portray Africans as hopeless, inadequate, and incompetent, when we know that this is not the case. You have my promise that Party Possibilities will not engineer sensational images of poverty just to win your support. But by the same token, we will not stop showing you and telling you the truth, even when that is uncomfortable. Because the bottom line is this: until we embrace our flaws, there can be no growth. The goddamn awful truth is that there's frightening levels of poverty in Nigeria. Mind-boggling, crippling, resentful, and angry poverty. Let us be embarrassed by it. But let's not turn away from the charities shining a light on the problems. It serves no purpose when we try to shut down arguments by saying, well, why don't they always show the good bits? There's the good bits. Why don't they show the good bit? And then we point to Lekki and we point to Victoria Island and Banana Island and the telecoms industry and the emerging music and fashion industry, and the fact that there's a posh supercar showroom in Lagos and that there's one Nigerian or two Nigerians on the richest list in the world, when the truth is that less than 30% of Nigerian children go to secondary school because of poverty. And as I've said before, there's no progress for Nigerians without education. There's no progress for Africa without education. It's very hard to turn a page with gloves on.
Go on, baby.
Now let me give you an update on two of our children, God's Power Wanchuku and Balaraba CD. God's Power was the first boy. Isn't his name just amazing? God's Power. God's Power was the first boy we sponsored in 2009. He had lost both his parents and his siblings were looking after him. Now it's important for you to know that we didn't know God's Power's story before we started sponsoring. We merely went to a primary school within a very poor Nigerian community, hoping to find talent that we can nurture. And now God's Power is at Caleb International School, getting the best education that we can afford. He has big dreams. He wants to play for Chelsea. He actually wants to play for Liverpool. And honestly, I felt like tearing up that sponsorship. And his school informs us that he's a talented player. But, as I told you, he wants to play for Liverpool. I'm a Chelsea fan myself, so it completely breaks my heart. But perhaps because of his love for Liverpool Football Club, he also wants to go to the University of Liverpool. And I've told him that international fees is no joke. So I don't know about that too. But God's Power wants to go to university and he's in SS2, so he has one more year of secondary school and we want to support him. We want to support him with all our hearts. this, remember this, God Power went to a redeemed Christian school, a charity. He's now sponsored by Path to Possibilities, a charity. So before you throw that phrase about Nigeria doesn't need charities, it needs investment and partnership, think about the children like God's Power and the many amazing charities, small and large, working earnestly to make a difference. A year after we sponsored God's Power, and this brings me almost to a close, so bear with me. And as I said in the beginning, I wasn't going to talk about Balaraba CD, but you will see why I'm talking about her shortly. A year after we sponsored God's Power, we took on Balaraba CD, a Hausa girl, who also is a Muslim. Convincing her father to let her go to secondary school wasn't easy, but with the strong support of her mother, he eventually agreed. Balaraba is now 15, we've been sponsoring her for 3 years. She should be starting the second half of her secondary school next year, but her father wants to withdraw her to get married. We are completely saddened and frustrated at this turn of events. We have invested 3 years in Balaraba's education. If you can meet her, she's so bright, so engaging, so articulate. When I got the text from her mum just last Saturday of her father's decision, it really broke my heart. It broke my heart completely because I've grown very, very fond of this girl. But we are working in a country where it is legal for Senator Yerima to marry a 14-year-old girl. We are working in a country where the political elite recently moved a motion that married children, irrespective of age, should be recognized as full adults. We are working in a country where children can be lawfully married. And this is not just about Bala. The reality is that there are more boys in school across the whole of Nigeria than girls. This is a big problem for our future because it is estimated that there are 80.2 million Nigerian girls and women living in Nigeria. So any discussion about Nigeria's future must include girls and their education. I said before that there's no future without the education of Nigerian girls. This may be the end of the road for Bala, as we call her, but it won't stop us taking on more girls, Hausa, Muslim or otherwise. I believe that even the 3 years of excellent secondary school education she received will stand her and her future children in good stead, if we can't convince her father to let her continue. Of all the challenges we face as a charity, this one touches my heart and soul the most, because it says that in 2013, in Nigeria doesn't value women. How else do you explain it? How else do you explain a country that allows 12, 13, 14 and 15-year-olds to get legally married without completing their education? And let's not hide behind religion, because in predominantly Muslim countries like Tunisia, Morocco and Algeria, they have a stipulated minimum age of 18 for marriage. Investments and partnership cannot tackle the deep-seated discrimination, injustice, and inequalities that poor people, women, and children face in Nigeria. Charities can keep shining a light on it. Nigeria needs charities. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you.